Hello! It is another Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. This week we are taking a general viewer's submitted question, one that actually a lot of people submitted, and the first, and no, not exclusively the first, but certainly the first instance of it being asked should be by the person whose username you should see in the lower third of the screen right about now. And whenever it was asked, a lot of people liked it. A lot of people wanted to signal boost it and make sure I saw that this is this is something that a lot of people wanted. But yes, this week we will be ranking Daedric Princes as they appear in the Elder Scrolls, just across the various games and I suppose mediums. Mind you, this will be sort of as I know them, right? This is a ranking. I am ranking them, therefore it is my list. There will be some points where I'm very obviously biased, but you know, why else would you want to see someone else rank them if you didn't want to see some of their own internal biases and ignorance as well. I'm not nearly as well versed in every single Daedric Prince as I am some, right? There are definitely blind spots that I have. But hey, this is kind of a stupid, fun little question, right? I like these ranking ones. We've got actually a decent number of them. Feel free to, as per usual, send in a question via a comment. Helps a ton if you have a question mark in there, because it'll help me find it and add it to our ever-growing, but also ever-shrinking list of questions. And, of course, you can include more stupid requests for ranking stuff, right? I believe in there we have, like, major cities, major settlements in Morrowind, Adra as well. I think Daedric artifacts might be on there. I'm not sure if Daedric artifacts are on there, right? Still, I feel, these are really stupid and fun. I like them. Maybe if we get enough, I don't know. No promises. Never mind. I take it back. I retract the statement before I even make it. Anyway, we'll do a quick cut here. And I'll go into like picture-in-picture mode up into the little corner around here, and we'll get to looking at the tier list, as it were. All right, I'll see you shortly. All right, and we are back. And apologies, this is, of course, always the case whenever we're doing a playthrough, and I'm now starting to use Facecam for that. But apologies here for an in-real-life video where this is normally not the case, but I'll probably get some glare in my glasses because I've got up on my second screen the ever useful and ever incredible and ever recommended by yours truly, uesp.net, just in case we need a quick refresher on some of the more, I don't know, not esoteric, but less frequently used Daedric Princes, right? Ones which I may need a little refresher on. We won't look through like, if necessary, we won't look through like, oh, these are their quests. This is everything about them. Just like the first few sentences of their UESP entry, right? Anyway, first and foremost as well, on this incredible list, on this incredible tier list, this is on the tier maker site, as well. Double thanks to uesp.net for providing, or not even making or whatever, but just getting the image of Ithelia, right? Who was not part of this list originally. This is a bit of a newer addition to the typical pantheon of Daedric Princes in Elder Scrolls lore. For those of you who do not know, this is a Daedric Prince who was forgotten and was recently re-remembered, and I think summarily forgotten again, as part of ESO, right? And thus, I think there's no better place to place them than, or time to place them than right now. Let me just rank Ithelia. And like I said, I made and added this one myself, which is why the font looks a little bit different and the cropping on the black bars at the bottom is slightly askew. My apologies. Will you ever forgive me? Nonetheless, I do not forgive Ithelia, for I don't really know anything about them, right? And we'll get into more about it, but Ithelia, D-rank, just immediately. Let's talk about this a little bit. I'm not even keen to look up what exactly this character does in the event that I do eventually get into ESO for the sake of at least storyline stuff. But we'll sort of remove ourselves from all of that and not consider them in more of a video game sense. Like I said, mind you, this is going to be a very biased list. Already we're coming in strong, I would say. I'm sure Athelia is perfectly nice or perfectly horrible, right? Whichever they're meant to be. However, like I said, removing myself from lore, which frankly I don't know, I don't think it's a good idea to introduce a new Daedric Prince. Granted, they try and get around it and say like, oh, this one was forgotten. And the act of forgetting is kind of like a major plot point, is from what I know, right? Without spoiling myself on anything, from what I've heard through like cultural osmosis, the forgetting and re-forgetting of this Daedric Prince is it's a major plot point, right? It's entirely to do with the arc of that expansion or whatever it is in ESO. However, I don't think you should do that. I think this is a story that should be reserved for like a core game, you know? Like, for instance, if like Elder Scrolls Legends, may Arcade rest its soul, did something like that, I wouldn't be down for it either. Or Elder Scrolls Blades, Elder Scrolls Castles, any Elder Scrolls Adventure. I feel like this is the type of thing that should be reserved for a core game that the vast majority of people will play, right? I understand the urge to do it and to include it, right? And I think that's very cool and fun, but I think there's so many other Daedric Princes that you could serve who just are not super fleshed out. And granted, maybe in ESO they are, right? Once again, this is my ignorance showing, right? And my biases. But I feel like you just shouldn't do it in a non-core game. For as long-lived ESO is, against all damn odds, I feel like this is just not an arc that you should undertake for the MMO spinoff, you know? I feel like it's too wild. There's too much. I do think it's cool that, as far as, from what I've heard, there are inklings of people talking about like how in pre-existing lore there is room and room to interpret that, like, yeah, there was a Daedric Prince who went missing or something like that. And it was slightly like, not foreshadowed, but they made room for it to be a possibility, which, of course, is something that I'm very open to complimenting about Elder Scrolls lore in general. I very much like it. Just how loose, how fluid a lot of the lore is, how it shapes around the games themselves. Nothing is truly nailed down for better or worse. So this kind of thing, I'm down for it. But I do think it should have been reserved for like a core game, right? And thus, I'm sorry, Athelia, however cool or rotten or amazing or devastating you may be, I'm putting you at the bottom, right? My dearest and most sincere apologies to Athelia lovers everywhere. Anyway, let's go with another simple one. Probably my favorite. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of fun ones. Let's start with. We'll start with something easier, right? Azura, right? Azura. I very much enjoy Azura. But granted, I am a Dunmer lover, right? The Lady of Dawn and Dusk. She's got a really cool artifact. Her quests, for the most part, I would probably say pop her right there in A, right? A is for Azura and other Daedric Princes. I really enjoyed the idea of her being in A because, like I said, she's got such an incredible part of like shaping Dunmeri lore, which is super, I don't know, impressive in my opinion, right? See our other ranking for Elder Scrolls stuff, wherein I ranked all of the playable races in Elder Scrolls lore. And let me tell you, Dunmer were right up there at the top, as you would expect, right? Given all the playthroughs that we do on the channel and what race I decide to play as. But I would put her at A Mostly because, and I would be tempted to put her up all the way at the tippy top at S rank, but her downfall for me, as far as being like a narrative device or whatever, I would say, is that the more insidious side of her is rarely ever explored, right? She literally cursed all of Dunmer, right? And forever changed their trajectory as a people. And yet, the more insidious side of her is very rarely, if ever, explored. She is often seen as, like, after issuing the curse upon Chimer, turning them into Dunmer, she's seen as almost entirely benevolent, right? Which is great and all of that, but there's so much opportunity to explore her as being more of a villain, right? And sort of seeing the way in which, she's cursed to people. There ought to be people who are really not into Azura, especially among Dunmer, or people who try to, even if Dunmer are too stubborn, there ought to be people who say, why do you love Azura so much when they have clearly screwed you over in a major way, right? What is compelling you to go this route, You've gone from Daedra worship to the living gods, the tribunal, and then back once again as the reclamations. What gives? I feel like there's more opportunity there to explore Azura as being a more antagonistic force, and it just hasn't happened yet. If we could delve into more of that, I would be down to bump her up to S rank, but for now, she's strong, right? She's a heavy contributor, and there's that hotel in Turkey that's got her on it too. That's pretty cool. But let's be real. That's not necessarily weighing on my decision to put her in A rank instead of S. Anyway, how about who is next on this list that we should go for? You know what? Why not Boethia? Now Boethia is one, despite being part of the anticipation / what do you call them? Reclamations? Right? Is that what it was? For within Dunmer worship? Let's see. Boethia. Let me load this up here. I don't know too much about Boethia. Boethia is the one, I don't know if it's true or not, but whose like gender identity within Elder Scrolls seems to be the most fluid. It feels like every other game, Boethia is presented either quite masculine or quite feminine, which I don't know is very fun. And frankly, I would be down for more of the Daedric Princes to do that. But at the same time, I do kind of like that they seem to have their preferences, and others seem to be a lot more fluid with their, their appearance and like the way in which they can change their shape and present themselves to the player. I appreciate the fact that there is some degree of preference there, right? But that's kind of fun about Boethia. Anyway, let's see. Boethia, known as the Prince of Plots, Daedric Prince of Cruelty and Torture, the Dark Warrior, Deceiver of Nations, Queen of Shadows, Goddess of Destruction, Hunger, Font of Inspiration, He who destroys and She who erases. Damn, that sounds cool as hell, that last one. Boethia the Schemer, the Dark Mistress, and called Boethia, or Bothra by the Khajiit, is a Daedric prince who rules over deceit, conspiracy, secret plots of murder, assassination, treason, and unlawful overthrow of authority. This sphere is destructive in nature, and Boethia's destructiveness comes from inspiring the arms of mortal warriors. Okay. Yeah, Boethia is one of the good Daedra, right? Which is very wild, all things considered. Let me see here. Let me double check and make sure. Is Boethia not one of the reclamations or whatever? I forget. Is Boethia one of them? Let's see. Yeah, Boethia is considered one of the good Daedra. Yeah, that's wild. But, what else can you expect of a culture that has state-sanctioned assassinations, right, for high enough ranking officials? If you want, you can just go get a writ from the Morag Tong and have someone potentially get taken out, and it's totally legal, right? I guess in that sense, it makes sense. It's a tough life. But Boethia, in that sense, I think the whole part of Boethia being like, right, he who destroys and she who erases sounds so damn cool to me, right? I'm going to click on this page on uesp.net. Where is this from? Somebody answering your questions. My God, that's wild. I guess an ESO NPC, I would presume. Yeah. ESO Lore Masters Archive. Man, that is so wild. That is so cool. Daedric Prince of Cruelty and Torture. This is, we sort of touched on this facet, or this phenomenon, in our ranking of Elder Scrolls playable races, wherein Elder Scrolls world building is absolutely incredible, but it continually runs into a problem where a lot of that world building happens off of camera, and a lot of that cool stuff you only ever hear about, and you don't actually get to see it in person, right? For instance, a big one that we brought up last time is how cool a lot of the world building is that exists for Bosmer, wherein they are like hyper carnivorous, wherein they have the green pack stuff where they can transform into an animal in a permanent way as sort of a self-defense mechanism. Stuff like that is so cool, and yet we don't really ever see it in a game, right? I think because of this, Boethia is cruising for a bruising. Boethia is maybe doomed to either B or C rank, right? If you want me to respect Boethia, I want some wild stuff popping off, right? Like Boethia's descriptors here and spheres of influence alludes to the idea that they could be maybe not a main antagonist, but at the very least involved in some pretty hefty business. And yet they just haven't yet. We just haven't really come to see it. So you know what? I think I'm going for C rank for Boethia. I'm sorry, Boethia, but we need to see more. And if we did see more, frankly, I think Boethia is gunning for an A or S rank because of that. Okay. How about one that I know I very much enjoy? And I think that one is none other than Meridia. People who have only played Skyrim may not enjoy Meridia, but I really like Meridia. I think Meridia is so aesthetically amazing. Frankly, in some ways underserved, in some ways underexplored. But I love Meridia played as an antagonistic force because a lot of her aesthetic is so, like, I don't know, traditionally, like, angelic, I guess. I don't know what the words would be, but a lot of her aesthetic is very holy looking, very, like, angelic looking, but true enough, she's awful, right? She's pretty bad. I like her I remember replying to someone's comment years ago now, and it stuck with me during the original Oblivion playthrough, not the remaster. But of course she is heavily served and decently involved in the Knights of the Nine arc, because she's very much embedded with the Aliads, and has a lot of tie-in there with, like I said, the Knights of the Nine and Umaril the Unfeathered in specific. But the way in which I sort of what I compared her to, and what reminded me of Meridia, are, if you have ever played Bayonetta, the angelic enemies in those games, that feels very Meridia coded to me. Perhaps I should say Meridia feels very Bayonetta coded to me. And that is why I rank her up so highly. I think true enough, you could say that she is very cool and you could totally do even more with Meridia. But they did do a decent amount. Like I said, if not for Knights of the Nine, I would probably bump Meridia down to like a B or C, similar to Boethia. But Knights of the Nine was a saving grace. Frankly, I would love to see more. People always joke about Meridia's orb and all that stuff these days, but frankly, I don't even find the orb that annoying, right? You know what I do find annoying? People who complain about the orb, right? Maybe stop complaining about the orb. I feel like, you know how many times I pick up that orb in a playthrough and it screams at me? Once. You know how many times I have to hear people say, another one has taken the beacon, the beacon shines upon another. I hear it all the fucking time. And I hate it. And for that reason, to spite all of them, Meridia's S rank, baby. No. But for real, I do like Meridia. I love Meridia played as an antagonist due to the aesthetic. I think it's super dope. It's super cool. I enjoy it immensely. Anyway, how about perhaps the inverse of that, wherein I bet a lot of people would rank Meridia lower, significantly lower. How about one that I think a lot of people would rank pretty highly, but I don't rank very highly at all? That being none other than Sheogorath. I would put Sheogorath at a C rank. I don't like Sheogorath. Sheogorath, everybody, if you've played Elder Scrolls, you know who Sheogorath is, right? Cheese for everyone, the Shivering Isles. What a cool expansion. He's a little out there. Look out, Lord Sheogorath. He's a little wild. Perhaps Wes Johnson's breakout role, most renowned role, and he always plays him. In Elder Scrolls games going forward. I don't think he does in ESO though, but he voices some other people in ESO. There was some weird situation involved with that. I don't know exactly. Oh, here, now that we're down to that, let me scroll this a bit. There we are. But I find it tiring. I find his particular brand of buffoonery to be tiring. I think Sheogorath is a great Daedric Prince to onboard people into a kind of kooky world and maybe the sillier side of Elder Scrolls world building. I think Sheogorath makes for a great sort of tutorial of Daedric Princes, you know? The Wabbajack is very fun. It's a very enjoyable item, randomly transforming a creature and all of that. Shivering Isles, true enough, very beautiful. I think there's a lot of problematic stuff in the Shivering Isles with regards to the way in which it depicts pretty serious mental illness. You know, I think that there's some issues there that could do with writing a bit more carefully. You know, it's a game of its time, right? I think we could potentially do better with Sheogorath insofar as exploring mental illness and stuff like that. I think you could do that a bit better. But even removing myself from the more problematic nature of a lot of that, I can't lie. I find the LOL so random shtick tiring. I don't care for it. It's like I said, it's really cool when you're just first getting into Elder Scrolls lore. It's fantastic for world building and all of that. But if you're years deep, if you're pages deep into UESP, if you've read a bunch of in-game lore books and you're deeper into the lore, you're no longer a novice or a journeyman. We're bumping it up to adept, at least. If you're at that point in Elder Scrolls lore, I don't think Sheogorath is going to be your fave anymore, right? I think that's the common trajectory for a lot of people. Fantastic and respectable sort of onboarding, but we can do better. And true enough, We could probably also rank Jiggalag here as well, a little bit. I think Jiggalag, as far as the Shivering Isles is concerned, without talking about it too much, given the fact that there are a lot of Oblivion first-timers now, thanks to Oblivion Remastered, we'll dance around the subject here and say that Jiggalag is a big part of what makes Sheogorath kind of cool. I'll say that. And in that sense, Jiggalag is B rank for me. Right? I kind of enjoy the dichotomy. You know? Without Jiggalag, Sheogorath probably ain't all that. So I'm putting Jiggalag at B rank and Sheogorath at a lowly C. Now, sort of tying these together, we mentioned Wes Johnson and all of that. Perhaps I would be shocked to tell you, way back in the day, when I was a Sheogorath enjoyer, first getting into Elder Scrolls lore, learning about stuff like this, which isn't to say I'm some seasoned veteran operating on Grandmaster legendary difficulty when it comes to lore. As far from it. Christ's sakes, I've got a UESP page up here just in case. I would, however, say, not in a million years would I ever believe that Hermaeus Mora, who in original Oblivion, their Daedric shrine looked like a potato overgrown. I don't think that's the case anymore. But Hermaeus Mora is an S-rank Daedric Prince, I think. So many evil, sinister pantheons have a character like this, sort of delving into eldritch horror, delving into like, oh, this is forbidden knowledge, there's tentacles, apocrypha, literally and figuratively in the metaphysical sense, and also in the location sort of sense, I should say, or I guess that's more literal, right? Literary, right? Books, Hermaeus Mora, everyone. But yes, true enough, there are a bunch of pantheons and stuff where there's a creature that is some sort of deific being, whether they be more goodly or more sinister, in which case Hermaeus Mora is. I think Wes Johnson absolutely, as far as Wes Johnson performances go, I think he's absolutely killing it as Hermaeus Mora. I think that sort of sleepy, mysterious talk is leagues above Sheogorath. I think it's so dope. I love it a lot. Just as well, the aesthetic present where the waters of Hermaeus Mora's Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's Plane of Oblivion, looking very inky, the books everywhere in Apocrypha, it looks amazing. The ways in which Hermaeus Mora can very easily sort of get into narrative plots and all of that. And I think in some ways was tied to Athelia, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. But a lot of that stuff, man, I love Hermaeus Mora. I want to see more Herma Mora. Also, Herma Mora got a cool name, right? Got a cool name. Hermaeus Mora, Herma Mora, Herma Mora, Herma. And also fun to see one that looks exceptionally inhuman. You know, doesn't look like any sort of living being that we could ever bear witness to. Periite looking like a little snake dude, but otherwise, Hermaeus Mora looking very unlike anything, you know. But like I said, there's plenty of... There's no shortage of this type of deific being in other worlds, in other universes. For instance, in Pillars of Eternity, there is Wall, who is very, very similar to Herma Mora. Like I said, they're all playing with similar tropes. And I think the way in which Elder Scrolls executes on Herma Mora, I think it's very good. I think they've done fantastic. And I hope that some of the setup that was present in the Dragonborn DLC for Skyrim, that we see, if not payoff, but a little bit more mention of how things panned out after all of that. Because there's some very peculiar tidbits in there. Right? Even if it's just a little note that you find somewhere, or a paragraph in a book, I'd be down for it. Anyway, who all should we do next? I guess Periite could be a good one to do, right? Periite could be fun. We did just mention them. So Periite, let me bring up Peryite here. From what I remember, is sort of like rules over the spheres, or has control over the spheres of pestilence, right? Various disease and all of that, which, I don't know, after having gone through a global pandemic lockdown situation, I feel like it's more prescient than ever. Let me see here. Let me double check. Let's see. Peryite's sphere is described as ordering the lowest orders of oblivion. He is also known as the Daedra of pestilence and plague, the taskmaster, blighted lord, figuring father, the lord of infection and pestilence, the bringer of disease and pestilence, the lord of natural order, the master of tasks, and the lord of abundant pus and bountiful vomit. Sick, literally. I kind of like Peryite. I kind of enjoy Peryite, but Peryite does also fall victim to being kind of underserved. Peryite got a shocking amount of involvement with their Daedric quests in Skyrim. It was surprisingly full of, there was just a lot to do with all the plagued people and whatnot. And there was, they continually showed up. My only issue is that we didn't really, we didn't delve that much into Peryite when it would have been particularly cool. And what I'm thinking of specifically is in Morrowind, right? This would have been a time for Peryite to shine. Morrowind's plot, the main story, revolves around the blight and the corpus disease. There is plague and pestilence all over the land and nary a mention of Peryite. It would have been fantastic there, and yet the opportunity has been squandered. Maybe Peryite will show up again. Maybe. But because of that, I think, although I enjoy the thinking behind Peryite and these people who have just dedicated themselves to just getting sick, just being like the ultimate, Peryite just commands a legion of anti-vaxxers, and I can't help but love the stupidity of it. But like I said, underserved in some ways, could have been so much in Morrowind. So, B rank, B rank. I do like Peryite. I want to see more from Peryite. There's a world in which Peryite could be S rank, I think. Their spheres of influence are specific enough and different enough from a lot of the others to where I think there's a good room for them. Okay. Let's see. Who ought we do next? How about... we were talking about ESO not too long ago. Molag Bal. I think the image that they use here for Molag Bal is even ESO art. Right? Molag Bal factors in heavily to the original storyline of ESO from when it launched. Right? Molag Bal is a problem. Right? Molag Bal is a problem in that I guess I'm thankful that they tackled Molag Bal in ESO, but lest we forget some of the things that Molag Bal was known for originally, UASP.net, won't you remind us? Let's see. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, wow. What a bunch of stuff here. Yeah. Yeah, Molag Bal got a lot of wild titles. Molag Bal got a lot of wild titles. Like, for instance, God of Schemes, Harvester of Souls, Lord of Domination, the Prince of Domination, Lord of Brutality. We're getting into stuff like Lord of Corruption, the Scheming Lord of Cold Harbor, Prince of Murder, the King of Rape, Molag, the Slave Lord, but also some more fun stuff with regards to vampires. The Dark Father, the Father of Vampires, Lord of the Undead, Father of Undeath, pretty neat, pretty cool. Some of the other stuff, pretty grisly, honestly. Really alluded to in Morrowind a lot in the periphery, in the world building, for some of the more unsavory stuff. But as well, alluded to a little bit when it comes to Serana with the Dawnguard and all of that, you know? I think that is pretty wild. I think there's room to talk about some of the most horrific parts of what Molag Bal does, but you really need to have a lot of writing chops to pull it off appropriately and as a sort of way of exploring, right, like, sexual violence. I think there's room for that. You could do that. Do I think somebody at BGS has got what it takes? I'm not convinced. So maybe it's best that we are steering clear of that in knowing that they probably don't have what it takes to write a story about that. Keep it on the periphery, I think. I think it's probably a good thing that we're more so saying Molag Bal, Prince of Domination, of brutality, you know? That's probably for the best, you know? I would like to see, frankly, maybe a gentler hand taken in the same vein as Molag Bal with Sheogorath and mental illness, to be quite honest. But I do think they're still willing to sort of explore it a bit. Like I said, with regards to being a daughter of Cold Harbor, Serana, all of that in the Dawnguard DLC. I think exploring Molag Bal via vampirism is super fascinating, super interesting. There's a bit of cool stuff there. Admittedly as well, I know very little about ESO as a whole. Thus, a lot of the goings-on there, it's just on my periphery. In that sense, I think Molag Bal has potential, and thus, I gotta put Molag Bal there with Periite. You know? I do think Molag Bal is handled better than Sheogorath with regards to being a dicey subject matter at times. I think they do it a lot more gracefully, a lot better on average. But I do think there's a place wherein if you're on that writing team, you are probably a little worried that you're going to fuck it up, right? You're going to mess it up in a major way and in a way in which few other Daedric Princes could do it, you know, if you're writing for them, right? There's a certain risk involved. And if, like I said, if you don't have the chops for it, maybe it's best to steer clear, you know? Maybe it's best. Just lean into the vampirism stuff, right? And in that sense, it is a bit of a missed opportunity. I'm sure, barring the closure of the Elder Scrolls as an intellectual property, I'm sure someday in the future, the time will come and there will be some sort of incredible story delivered, you know? But for now, maybe it's for the best. We'll see, though. We'll see. Like I said, the vampirism stuff is pretty neat. But I think there's no denying that history. A lot of people know of it. A lot of people talk about it. It's still talked about in the games, right? Here and there, sort of like I said, on the periphery, Daughter of Cold Harbor and junk like that. It's pretty wild, but they have yet to deliver on it in an incredible way. And they've kind of been, like I said, treading lightly, which I think is probably for the best. Similar to many others on this list, with the correct writer, someone who does have those chops, Molag Bal goes up to S tier, you know, wherein you explore a very human, heart-wrenching, tragic story. I think there's room for that in S rank, you know? If Molag Bal can serve as a narrative device to deliver some sort of storytelling in that way, I think there's room for it. But it's probably one of the most mature themes that you would ever get in an Elder Scrolls game, I would say. And like I said, they ain't got it yet, right? As far as we know. Maybe we're in for a surprise in a few years' time, but for the time being, continue treading carefully. Anyway, how about next? Someone who doesn't tread carefully. That's right, folks. Mehrunes Dagon, old Lord Dagon himself. Lord Dagon, a bit of a terrifying force of nature, quite literally, you know? People who have watched a Lord Dagon lore video are quick to tell you, Lord Dagon, he's not just Satan itself. He's not just an allegory for Satan. He's the Lord of change and disasters and stuff like that. That's why you got the place where the version of the Deadlands where you get the tower that's called Tsunami, Tornado, Maelstrom, and natural disasters in the middle. You know, all that. That's cool. We don't really ever see that, though. Right? We don't really ever see that, though. For the most part, he is Satan. For the most part, he is Satan. That's what I see a lot of. In practice, this is the classic error of Elder Scrolls world building. The world building, so cool. God, the stuff going on in some of these lore books and that we hear about happening off camera, off the player's time in the world. Wow, how cool, how neat. Would be kind of cool if we got to explore more of it, you know, which true enough, once again, illustrating my sort of own ignorance here. ESO, there's a lot of game there. Maybe they do explore a lot of that there, you know? Lord Dagon did have a whole expansion of ESO dedicated to his likeness. Or not to his likeness, but to himself. But that's neither here nor there. I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know about that. But as far as my realm of knowledge, old Lord Dagon, I kind of enjoy Lord Dagon as a bit of a bumbling fool. I have, through playing Oblivion now and in the past, I have regretfully come to attribute Lord Dagon to being a bit of a doofus, a bit of an idiot. And I love that for him, honestly. I love that for Lord Dagon. I like the idea of Lord Dagon being a little dumb, right? A little bit. Lord Dagon is the Nord of the Daedric pantheon. Of Daedric princes, if there were ever one who was the closest to your stereotypical Nord, Lord Dagon is at the top of the list to be the guy who gets stuck naked in the middle of the road, cursed by a witch. And who is that witch? Well, of course, it's Azura. No, it's Clavicus. No, it could be a lot of them, frankly. I do like the idea of that. If I didn't take into account my own personal fondness for Lord Dagon, I would probably say B rank. You know, I'd probably say B rank. But I do have a stupid fondness for Lord Dagon, you know? Like, we haven't yet gotten to the point in the playthrough where we're running into Mythic Dawn and they're screaming like, "For Lord Dagon!" and stuff like that, but man, I love it. I love the idea of Lord Dagon just being like this big doofus, you know? And he's like a sort of hilariously like archetypical villain where he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna destroy everything, look out." Were you gonna turn into a dragon and kill me? Oh no, you are. I don't know. I like it. I like it a lot. I like his whole situation. And this is a very terrifying picture. I know it's hard to make out right here what image they used, but if you are familiar with it, if you know, you know. This is like a gigantic Lord Dagon sitting upon an enormous throne with a whole bunch of people like suffering around him, right? Which is more like true to form Lord Dagon, the hardest motherfucker around and all that. But I'm sorry, I just read into him as being like a freaking doofus, dude. I love it. I gotta put him at A rank because of it. He probably deserves B rank, but like I said, this list is full of biases and stupidity. And lo and behold, who's the most stupid of them all? Well, it's me, followed by Lord Dagon. Anyway, who is next up on this list? Oh dear, how about, is Mephala one of the good Daedra? We were talking about the good Daedra before. Is it Mephala? Let me see here. Let me boot up the old UESP. I call upon you, educate me on Mephala. Let's see here. Let's see. I don't think so. I always forget. No, Mephala is one of the good the good Daedra of the Tribunal Faith. She is known as Black Hands Mephala and the Anticipation of Vivek. Okay. She is various and many and is androgynous. Let's see. Called her the Teaching Mother, the Elder Spirit, Keeper of the Ancient Secrets of Fadomai, the Clan Mother of Dark Secrets, the Eight Clawed. Okay. Web Spinner, Plot Weaver, androgyne, I think is how you say that? Like the sort of root word for androgynous. The Spinner, the Spider, the Teacher of the Secret Arts, the Queen of the Eight Shadows of Murder. Good lord. The Silver Spider, Spider Queen, the Spider God, the Dark One, the Whispering Lady, Lady of Whispers, Queen of Oblivion. Okay. She is also referred to as the Princess of Secrets, and she who weaves the sordid web of human affairs. Yeah, if you like Lolth, you're gonna love Mephala. Okay. But I do think... I think Mephala falls prey to the same issues that Boethia does. Mephala sounds super cool, but you hardly get anything, right? I think the most cool stuff that you get with Mephala is with the Morag Tong, right? Yeah, the Morag Tong and sort of the founding of that organization, and as it spun out into the Dark Brotherhood, right? Lest we forget the Morag Tong as we know them in Morrowind, the Dark Brotherhood is sourced from their existence. And people who do worship Mephala in that same way under the Morag Tong, right? They see the Dark Brotherhood and like the Night Mother as sort of a bastardization of what's going on with their Daedra worship. I would like some of that. I think that is very cool. I want that. I want that explored. I want that sort of antagonism between Mephala, between the Morag Tong, with the Dark Brotherhood. I want that explored. You don't even need to involve the Morag Tong. I just want Mephala to be mad at the Dark Brotherhood in some way. There's such opportunity there, you know? Mephala is super cool. Looks sick as heck because of all the wild spidery stuff going on. But, like I said, I think it's a Boethia situation. You know? I think it's a Boethia situation. Like I said, this is a very common phenomenon in Elder Scrolls wherein there's world building galore, but we just never get to see anything in practice that's super wild. You know? It's rife with opportunity. So, Mephala, I'm sorry. You do... Well, Mephala does have all these connections to, like I said, the Morag Tong and the Dark Brotherhood. That is pretty neat. Maybe that does bump Mephala up one above Boethia. Yeah, I think so. That said, very dangerously close to being C rank, I think. And once again, yet another case where, with more credence paid to this character, you could get bumped way up. Which, hey, a lot of Elder Scrolls expansions do seem to historically focus on a Daedric Prince. Maybe Mephala will finally get their due. Speaking of which, Hircine, right? Speaking of Morrowind, the Blood Moon expansion focuses heavily on Hircine, who is this sort of super hunt master, can turn into different stuff, is frankly very spooky for me as a child, playing through the Blood Moon expansion. Very much scared me. Sort of brings us werewolves. You know, Hircine is predominantly responsible for werewolves. And yet, is Hircine cool or are werewolves cool? Let's ponder that for a spell. Well, shouldn't we? Do we think Hircine is really that cool? Or are we, when we say Hircine is cool, do we really just mean it's cool that there are werewolves and werebears in this world? I love that. But Hircine's relationship to them, even in Blood Moon, which, you know, a sign of the times, and the fact that it was done by like a contracted outside team, I believe it was, Blood Moon, for Morrowind. It's kind of short-shrifted. There isn't that much explored into the mythos of it. What's far more compelling is, in the Blood Moon expansion, what I find far more compelling isn't Hircine, isn't even the werewolves. It's the East Empire Company, right? I think the East Empire Company is way cooler and way better of an antagonistic force than Hircine. I mean, it's spooky as a child, as a literal child, it was scary. Come on, Hircine, get it together. In this sense, bearing all that in mind, Hircine for me is either C or B. Right? Or Hircine, if you prefer. Whichever. I think the biggest destroyer of Hircine, is the werewolf argument, right? I think I have destroyed Hircine with facts and logic. When we say, oh, I love Hircine, are we saying that we think Hircine is that damn cool? I don't think so. I think we're saying it's sick that there are werewolves in these games. You know, I think that's it. And because of that, Hircine, more like her C rank. There you go. Get in there. Let's see. Who's next? Who should we do next? How about... How about... Let's try Namira. Namira's one I'm really not familiar with. Let's see. I do need to just look up Namira. Let's go with Namira out of being kind of a challenge. Oh, Namira also looking pretty spidery. Namira also looking pretty wild. And maybe, have I conflated Namira with Mephala? Let me see. No, I have not. I've not. Okay. Let's see. Namira is a Daedric Prince whose sphere is the ancient darkness. She is also known as the Daedric Prince of Hunger, Mistress of Decay, Lady of Decay, Spirit Daedra, Goddess of the Dark. Yeah, is Namira not in some ways tied to the Dark Brotherhood? Doesn't seem like it. Okay, does not seem like it. Yeah, Namira is involved. Is Namira involved in the cannibalism quest? It looks like it. Let me see. Yeah, cannibalism. Others practice ritual murder and cannibalism to honor Namira. Namira does not consider the practice of mortals eating ogres to be cannibalism and would be offended if one of her followers did such a thing while touting it as such. God. Namira is the ruler of sundry dark and shadowy spirits, and is often associated with slugs, spiders, and other things that inspire mortals with instinctive revulsion. Namira, the Daedric Prince of the Ick. Cool. Okay. The Khajiit believe that all creatures who feed on rotten flesh are her spies. That just makes Khajiit sound cooler. God. Namira kind of stepping on the toes of Periite here, though. You know? This is one of the things that I think is true of Elder Scrolls. There's a lot of Daedric princes, and I feel like they aren't all incredibly well defined. You know? They aren't all terribly well defined. And they could use some work. Some tuning up, as it were. Which, like I said, when we were talking about Ethelia at the start, It's part of the reasons why I think we shouldn't have done something like that just yet. Because we're kind of jumping the gun when so many of the other Daedric Princes could do with so much more writing and depth. But we're here with Namira. In some cultures' creation story, she is responsible for corrupting Lorkhan, or making a deal with him during his endeavor to create Mundus. That's pretty wild. Too bad I've never heard of that until now. Right? That seems like a big deal. I feel like I should have heard about that, Namira. I don't know. I don't know. The cannibalism stuff is kind of cool. But I think Namira is another C ranker, right? I think Namira sucks a butt, right? Namira, the cannibalism stuff is, listen, when I think of Namira, is Namira cool or is cannibalism cool? Look, is Namira that sick or is cannibalism actually what we're talking about that's cool as hell? Is Aeola as present in the cannibalism, Namira's quest? Is Aeola cool or is Namira cool? I think Aeola might be cooler, frankly, right? This is where it's gotta be. C rank for Namira. Namira, you gotta step it up. If anything, Namira, I think you're nearly in D rank. You know, Namira, I think you're nearly in D rank. If it not, cannibalism is the only thing keeping you out of D rank, Namira. That's the only thing doing it for you. I'm sorry, I just don't know that much about you. We gotta up these numbers. All right. How about Malakath, the shirtless freak born of shit that everybody loves? Or folks, give it up for Malakath. Orcs love them. They're born of poop. They got a cool statue ready to attack you, and they ain't wearing a shirt. God, they're all over Morrowind. You know what? I think this stuff about Trinimac and such is so stupid that it elevates Malakath in the same way that Lord Dagon has been elevated. Let me look up Malakath here real quick, right? Because I'm ready to put Malakath in rank A right fucking now. just because of poop, right? Just because of poop. And honestly, incredible marketing, right? Clavicus Vile, sit your butt down. Malakath, the Daedric Prince of marketing, right? How many statues of this asshole have we seen? Lord Malakath. Let's see. Daedric Prince of lies, deception, and hypocrisy. Come on, wasn't that somebody else? This is what I'm talking about. Wasn't somebody else about that too? How many Daedric Princes of lies and deception are we going to have here? God, isn't Nocturnal also part of that? Good Lord. All right. Daedric Prince of the Bloody Oath, Lord of Ash and Bone, Lord of Monsters, Oathbreaker, Creator of Curses, He who speaks sideways, the Furious One, the Keeper of the Bloody Curse, the Daedric Prince of Vengeance, Defender of the Betrayed. Right, yeah, as under orcs, right? That is kind of cool. That is kind of cool, actually. Okay. Yeah, the Devouring of Trinimac. And then pooping them out. Okay. Who ate Trinimac? It was Boethia, wasn't it? Let's see. Which in that sense, this is another question we must ask ourselves. In the devouring of Trinimac and the creation of Malakath, which, you know, may or may not have happened, it's Elder Scrolls, right? Who can say? It's so wild. Who can say one way or the other? Who's cooler in this, right? You beat the hell out of Trinimac, you eat them, you poop them out, and they become a different dude, and suddenly you're not cool, right? You know who is cool? You know who is more respected? Malakath, the literal shit lord, is cooler than Boethia. I think it's true. I think Malakath is fucking A-rank, baby. I think Malakath fucking is murdering Boethia out here. Malakath near the top for being just a deranged freak, honestly. How is it that right? If anything, Malakath should be the prince of, like, pestilence or whatever. Damn you to hell, Peryite. Damn you to whatever stupid plane of oblivion you hate the most that isn't your own. But frankly, Malakath should be like the prince of pestilence and pus and nonstop vomiting on account of being poop, right? People think that this dude is poop. It should be Malakath. God, this ranking is going off the walls. How long have I been going for? Oh my God, it's been over an hour. Okay, God, man, I'm sorry. I guess I just fucking love talking about Elder Scrolls stuff. This is so stupid. We're literally talking about a poop god, a poop demon god, and I just gave them a rank, and I don't feel bad about it. All right. You know what? Let's find out about Trinimac. I don't know shit about Trinimac, other than that they got turned into poop. Trinimac, the warrior, the paragon, the golden champion. Oh, man. Was a prominent god of the early Aldmer. In some places, he was even more popular than Oriel. Oh, my God. Malakath. This just solidifies my love of Malakath being an absolute freak. God, that rocks so much for orcs. Right? That their beloved Malakath was once like this holy warrior of light, of like being the super golden god or whatever, the golden warrior. Yeah, the golden champion for the stupid ass high elves. And now, hell yeah, welcome to Orc World, baby. Now you're shit and we love it. God, I love it. Okay, man, let's do it. Let's get it going. All right. How about Nocturnal, who we know a bit about, who shows up every now and again, and frankly is a little boring. I think my first instinct is Nocturnal, a little plain, right? Sure, she's got banging tits and cool birds, but otherwise, I don't know. She is also known as the Lady of the Night, Mistress of Shadows, the Unfathomable Mistress of Shadows, the Shadow Thief, the Unfathomable, the Empress of Murk, the Shadow Queen, the Shadowy Hag, the Lady of the Twilight, the Daughter of Twilight, Lady of Shadows. How is she tied to Azura then? I feel like you can't say anything about Twilight. Come on, Nocturnal. Hang on. You gotta be respecting Azura with the dawn and dusk. Let's see. Nocturnal's enemies are Ebon Arm, Meridia, Mehrunes Dagon, and Azura. God. Oh yeah, she's got wild shit going on with Khajiit, right? A deity known as Noctra exists in ancient Khajiiti mythos. Yeah. That's kind of wild. Her ties with Khajiit. Apparently there's a ton of stuff going on with her in ESO. Just scrolling through, man, I should really play ESO on the channel and all that, at least like as a single player game. That's what's gonna happen by the end of these fucking stupid ass rankings. It's gonna happen. It's gonna get me to play ESO on the channel. God, what the hell am I looking at in this? This is disgusting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, true enough, she's got some pretty dope artifacts, but I mean, who gives a damn, right? We shouldn't judge a Daedric Prince by their artifacts. You know? Skeleton Key and Grey Cowl, though. Pretty cool. Associations with the Thieves Guild, that's alright. I guess Nocturnal's okay. I'm putting Nocturnal in B rank. I guess Nocturnal's okay. She's no Hermamora. She's no shitload of eyeballs. She's no literal shit. she's no Malakath, but she's alright, I guess. That's why we keep her around. Okay, how about who's next here? How about let's see, Vermina, another one who I just don't really know much about, right? Similar to Namira, Vermina. The Prince of Dreams and Nightmares. Oh, this is Vermina. Okay, Vermina's sick, actually. Okay. The Gifter, Mistress of Nightmares and Dark Portents, Lady of Nightmares, the Weaver of Dreams, the Queen of Nightmares, Weaver of Panoply, Daedric Lady of Corruption and Decay, Dreamweaver, the Dark Lady. Okay. Yeah, Vermina is kind of cool. I do wonder, though, could this be another instance? Man, once again, yeah, there's a lot of ESO stuff here. Jeez, just rapidly scrolling through just like fucking wild screenshots from ESO of stuff going down. I'm pretending not to see all that. Vermina, though, as far as my experience with Vermina goes, pretty neat quests, but could be so much more, which to me sounds like ripe for B rank, where this is sort of where they're all living. You know, people who could be a lot better off. You know, who could have, whether it be headcanon or actual genuine canon, making them super compelling and fun. A lot of people are just here, you know? And I think C rank is mostly reserved for a lot of Daedric princes who are either their execution has been botched, I would say, in some form or the other, I think. Or we know even less about them to where they're not even enticing to me. Okay. So Sanguine. Sanguine is the horny one. Sanguine is the horny one. I mean, I guess you could make a case for someone else on this list, but that's a lot less fun. Let's see. Let's bring up Sanguine here on UESP so we can learn a little bit more. Let's see. I think for a lot of people, when we discuss the Daedric Prince Sanguine, we think they're the horny one. But it's more than that, right? Sanguine, known to his worshippers as the Lord of Revelry, blood made pleasure. God, that's cool. Who tastes the shaven fruit. Daedric Prince of lust, perversity, and unnatural sexual relations. You know what? Sometimes you're just right on the first shot. Sometimes you just get it right. It's correct immediately. Sanguine is mostly just the horny one. I mean, also, you know, revelry, partying, having a fun time to perhaps deleterious ends, right? To the detriment of others. But still, partying. Big time partier. I like that, right? That's all right. But God, the more I talk about, the more it sounds like that's B rank, baby. That's B rank. Yeah, you're cool. You do a lot of fun stuff. You're partying it up. Give me a story. Give me a damn narrative with that, right? That's once again ripe for opportunity, but unexplored. You know? There's not even a shitload of wild ESO screenshots here. Sanguine hasn't even gotten like a bunch of wild stuff popping off in ESO to where there's like a million grotesque screenshots of shit popping off there. Right? just going by that, which we shouldn't, right? To be fair, we shouldn't go by that. But true enough, Sanguine, I think Sanguine's another one with a lot of potential. A lot of people are fond of Sanguine. I would count myself among them. And yet, there's just nothing really to drive Sanguine up further on this list. Thus, B rank for Sanguine. Clavicus Vile has ended up being our final one here. The Daedric Prince of Deals, I would say. Let's load you up here so we can get a more thorough look. Let's see. Known as the Prince of Trickery and Bargains, consummate politician of oblivion, master of insidious wishes, child god of the morning star. Okay. Yeah. Making a deal. Oh, apparently tied to the book, right? Yeah, played a role in the creation of the Ingenium. Yeah, the what's it called? The floating city or whatever it was. What was it called? That the Elder Scrolls book, one of two. Not that they were directly connected, I don't think. God, you know what I really want? I do really enjoy Clavicus Vile, and I think Barbas as well is super well done. Right, of them having this sort of antagonistic nature. God, especially given what Clavicus Vile has spheres over, like sort of rules in their domain. Clavicus Vile has the makings for them being like the main impetus of an entire game. You know, you get political intrigue involved, you get Clavicus Vile involved, someone made a deal and it's costing them dearly or whatever. I think Clavicus Vile has so much opportunity from that angle, right? From the angle of politics and deal making, I think Clavicus Vile has so much opportunity. And I think even as is, even in like player experiences where we see like, oh, you can make a choice between the dog, you get a cool axe, you get the Mask of Clavicus Vile, stuff like that. Isn't also the Bitter Chalice Clavicus Vile? The Bitter Cup, my bad. Yeah. In some ways associated. Yeah. That's also pretty fun. Yeah, there's no denying it. Also tied to Umbra? Umbra is, oh my gosh, yeah. Umbra is a creation of Clavicus Vile. God, yeah, Clavicus Vile has so much opportunity. I do like Clavicus Vile quite a bit. Probably owed to, right, there's so much player agency involved because of the nature of Clavicus Vile. Okay. I think Clavicus Vile, easy A rank for me, right? Fantastic, could be even more, right? Just as is the case with Azura, you know? With a little bit more work, Clavicus Vile is S rank easy. What I would love in thinking about Clavicus Vile before we close this down, because we've been going on for a gajillion years here, Clavicus Vile could very easily make it into S rank, I think, by virtue of being maybe like the antagonist of like Elder Scrolls 6, you know, with regards to the Aldmeri Dominion or any other political body. Okay, here's what I would really like. If not a primary villain or villainous force, antagonistic force, at the very least, a secondary or like ancillary one in that sense. I would love Clavicus Vile to sort of have made a deal that benefits, but also costs in some way, whoever the like head of the East Empire Company is. I don't know how you would do it exactly, but what I want is some sort of arc, some sort of story or whatever, in which Clavicus Vile is meshed with the East Empire Company as a sort of way to fully bring them to the forefront of just being open villains. Right? There's so much opportunity with the East Empire Company, with a character like Clavicus Vile. Someone needs to seize that opportunity and take it and turn it into a really good tale, right? There's such a great opportunity there with Clavicus Vile and the EEC. It's ridiculous. And they still have the East Empire Company, like in Skyrim time in the 4th era, sort of garnering power as a lot of the other institutions of the Tamrielic Empire are either falling apart or having to be focused purely on the Aldmeri Dominion. God, I really want the EEC to be like a major force and be kind of like villainous, as they were in Morrowind, with regards to especially the Blood Moon expansion. I think there's so much opportunity. There's a little bit of them present in Skyrim. You know, you can get that one follower. There's the one really cool quest where you get bombarded by them. I want more of that. I want them to go like full private military company and shit like that. Dude, there's such opportunity with the EEC, I think, you know? True enough, the nature of the EEC, I think, makes them sort of like ripe to be a critique levied at like capital, you know, and like corporate interests. That might step on the toes of storylines that you could also explore very readily in Fallout. But I think it's so much cooler and unique to do it in a fantasy setting. But maybe that's just my bias for Elder Scrolls speaking. You know, maybe that's just my bias there talking. Right? And I don't know what I'm talking about. But true enough, I think Clavicus Vile has a lot going on. There's a lot of cool stuff involving, like I said, player choice, player agency in the actual quests. It's a very intriguing, like, give and take. Clavicus Vile tied to some interesting artifacts, but more importantly, tied to, like, fan favorite character in the case of Umbra, who once again is, like, operating kind of at the periphery of the games, and perhaps not at all in Skyrim. I don't know. There's some debate about the Ebony Warrior, right? But regardless, that's stuff that bumps Clavicus Vile down to A rank. And once again, could easily be an S. You know, like I said, along there, up there with Azura, where with just a little bit more going on, they could both very easily be in S rank for me, you know? And in a similar way, I think Meridia could almost be A rank, right? I think, yeah, I'm happy with this list. I do feel bad for Ithelia, because D rank has pretty much just been exclusively rendered to be like, this is a rank dedicated to Ithelia because we just don't know much about her. And as sort of a world building decision, I don't like the decision to do that in a not core game, right? I would like to revisit this after playing ESO and knowing more of those stories. And we can qualify a lot of these and changes with them with like, well, in ESO, normally in my old list, I had them here, but now knowing what is known in ESO, we can change them to right here or bump them up, such and such, you know? I like the idea of that. God, I'm manifesting my own destiny here, as it were, right? Though perhaps, hopefully a lot less problematic than the namesake. But this is like, how many more of these before it's like, well, I guess we're just doing an ESO playthrough, as weird as it may be on the channel, right? Yeah, and aren't they getting that more freedom of like spell making and like make your own custom class stuff? Kind of like what SWTOR did. Star Wars: The Old Republic. All right. Well, here's my tier list. Like I said, it's mine. It's kind of stupid. But man, I sure had a lot of fun making it. Hopefully you had fun listening to this nonsense. God, it's great. It's so cool. Man, Elder Scrolls rocks, huh? All right. That ought to do it for this week. As per usual, feel free, like I said, feel free to submit ideas for more silly rankings and stuff like that. Until next time, please take care of each other.